너무 nghe sinh rồi. Yeah.
Can you all hear me?
Đã 돼요.
Oh, okay.
너무 nghe sinh rồi.
We will begin with the opening prayers.
Vindrajire gyobani sene tensali she domdre soande dedan denge duma tamje bayon singe shile josen tome meba kombe vision tebe pare sendre soande sende chanjuro yembe Cielo seba cheve namdaraji Kumi jemba dendir soande Chambe loji niji donjo Tanrawa meba engi jonambrada Tone gyudan jelada gyoshi Mida ngebra sindri soande Nyelo nyelo gezi medon shi Kati shaya nipu chelenchi Kewe nganzu sambo medon we Shini penze kandre soan So sora dena nyamjane Changi so sura jebe shiragi Shiro jezo jobra me sheba Chembro chala zishi jishi Loi meno daba nanji sanjirane Gela jove lodre givede Nyonso ngora zede soan Tedra yende jelege kanto Yende jebe Chashi jebe lusen tende Gama baye gomba zonje sho Ho sangye je dan so ye sho nama la chen jo bando dane ye so Ta ge jun ye gi be san nama ye ro la ben san ye ro bra jo san ye je dan so ye sho nama Chanjo bado dane gyazut Dagi jenye gibe sanan ye rola ben Sangye rovra sho Sangye jedan soye shonama Chanjo bado dane gyazut Dagi jenye gibe sanan ye rola ben Sangye rovra Jeso yera guje sawa Kewa jose dagi jesa ba tamje dang Chanju jemo sashi buju joji medo Rejave nishi ninde gemba Sangye jindo mede buwai Droge nanda jinla je barasho Senje namye samba Loye jera jida Shizhon de mon de bai chege golo golo so.
짠나봐. 뱅게 안 참으로랴. 자시베 쯤지. 슈아인.
I would like to wish you all an auspicious welcome. See. The people who asked me to give these Arya Chemas brings were the Arya organizing community, but the actual people whom we're giving these teachings to are primarily the nunneries, but of course, together with them, we have the Kaju Shedras also are participating. And so we have this opportunity to all enjoy the true Dharma together. Now this year and last year, because of the pandemic, it has been difficult to travel and to gather together. But because of technological tools, there's been such an advance in technological tools, even though we are separated by a great distance, it's like we can speak to each other as if we are in each other's presence. And many people have the opportunity to hear and listen. And so in the past, people from an older time or from ancient times who could not even dream of such an opportunity, and yet we have this opportunity. But if we think that this is easy and simple, and then don't pay attention or do not consider it important, this opportunity that we have received, I'm not saying that I'm an important person who is an important person teaching the Dharma. But the Dharma that we're teaching, the story of the liberation of a great being, such as the eighth Karmapa Mikyo Dorjide, and Mikyo Dorje is important for all of the students who study the Kagyu philosophy.
안수기 미규도지게
Nice to begin with. And I hope that because of studying the liberation story of Mikyo Dorje, that you'll have a better idea than you did before of what kind of a Lama Mikyo Dorje was, what his character was, how he acted, how he taught, what his behavior was like. And so we come to know this, and when we understand the reasons for that, and then at that point we can feel real faith for him. And so without, in other words, if it were otherwise, we just said, thou shalt feel faith in Mikyo Dorje, we would not necessarily do that. If we say it's important, you must feel faith. But we need to think about, how does faith develop? If we think about, it's the same in our daily life. If we're going to develop confidence in a person, we first have to know that person. We don't easily feel confidence in someone we don't know. And so for that reason, we need to know something about who Mikyo Dorje was. And then only then we can figure out how much value should we place on Mikyo Dorje, how much belief in it. I think that that's the best way. It becomes clear in our minds. And so for that reason, this teaching is different than others and is more important than others we have had in the past. And so now, as I said I would give a brief introduction to the birthplace of Mikyo Dorje. So I'll give a very short introduction to Mikyo Dorje's birthplace. Maybe I should say something about this actually first. Hang on a second. Please take a look at this picture. The original for this tanka is an old Enkidu. It is kept in the Rubin Museum in America. It's an old tanka of Mikyo Dorje. Now take a look at the right side of this. Look to his right side. There is an attendant who is holding something, old thing, and that is crested hat, the seisha. And so I mentioned this in the past, and I shared my opinion. And at that point, when we had a meeting, and some people thought that if we use a yellow hat, then that is the same. We Kajipas wear the gomsha. Isn't it better to wear gomsha? We should wear the meditation hat called the shata. So people did say this, but at that point I said the yellow hat was worn by the previous Karmapas. And there's talk about it being a Vinaya hat. So it's okay to read it. And so I kind of insisted on this. And later, there was an explanation by Kame Kenshin Rinchen Daije that I received. And when Kame Kenshin Rinchen Daije explained history, he gave a commentary from the fourth Karmapa that explained the yellow hat. And so for that reason, And so from that reason, people realized, oh, of course, there was an old tradition of the Kajupas wearing the yellow hats. And so everyone believed and then felt comfortable wearing it. So now, this hat, I think we have a real factual evidence that Mika Dorje wore a yellow hat. And so this is sort of, now this is, of course, a new drawing, but it is taking the old one as a model. So I thought I'd explain that to you all first. Now this is Mika Dorje's birthplace. So this is the place where he was born. Now, the name of this of Mika Dorje's birthday is these days is called it's in Changdu in Gazingzong. And you have to go up from Changdu city, and it's a 2-hour trip. They say. Mika Dorje's father was, as I said yesterday, was Sirjadalo Champeshinyan. And other people say it is Ajam. So there are these two. But Mika Dorje himself, in most of his autobiographies, says that it's Sirjadalo Champeshinyan. But Ajam was actually the father in the family. And Sirjadalo Champeshinyan probably got in there somehow in the middle. I don't know exactly how. And there was probably some little difficulty that happened about that. When you read the life stories, I didn't say this the other day. The day that Mika Dorje was born, Ajam got a little bit included. And so you're bringing all these dogs, all these dog puppies into the house and beat his mother. And so there's something to think about. But Ajam, he has actually acted like a father and took care of Mika Dorje. And so he was really the same as being a father. Now the mother was Dongso Lamadron, as I mentioned before. And so he's the granddaughter of Dong Kachama. And she was born on the 4th day of the month. So in terms of, this is 1507. However, but actually, it's actually 100% that year. But in Tibetan, there are the extra months and sometimes, and the change in the calendars. And for that reason, we can't 100% that it was that year, but it probably was that year. And his Dharma name, and Gyaltsab Tashi Namgyal gave him the name Chepal Sampo. And his monastic name was Palchuduk Drapa, and so forth. So these are the names recorded in the histories. The next, in Mika Dorje's birthplace, when you actually go to the place, what are the sites associated with Mika Dorje that you can still see? In the upper left, there is the picture of Mika Dorje. So this was a stupa that must have been built by his family or by his students. And in the upper right, where there's the tree, they say that this is in Techak Posad, they planted a tree in that year, in the year of Mika Dorje's birth. And then the lower left, you see the root of the bark of a tree. And so this is said to be tree bark that was used to wrap his mother's body as a shroud. after she passed away. And so so it says they took they hollowed out a tree and put her inside of it, but now they hollowed out the tree and put her body inside of it, and so her body decomposed, but the bark still remains. And now the upper left there, with the manis, with the upper, with the carved stones. There was a house or a stupa that was built in his mother's memory, but nowadays it is just rules. It's just the rules of of that house, they say. And on the upper left there, the great footprint, right? This is, they say, is a footprint of Miksha Dorje that is in someone's home. And below, where there are many rocks, right? In the middle, there are some footprints. And these are footprints from when Mikyo Dorje was a child. In any case, even to this day, in that region is an area where they follow the Karma Kaju and where they uphold the Karma Kaju tradition. So next, now that I've talked about his life story a little bit, I would like to talk about the second of the stanza of the praise. He searched thoroughly. Now, according to the Animations by the fifth Shamar Kuncha Yenlak, the meaning of the stanza, or the topic of this stanza, is how he entered the teachings himself and also brought others into them. Excuse me, it's a little bit different. It's how he gave up the impedance to the teachings and began engaging in benefiting others. The text says, seeing that those who try to make pseudo-dharma of the disobedient and naturally unwholesome, that the true dharma remain outside like a husk. He taught the fine meaning well. To him I pray. To explain in brief what this means, when we are practicing the dharma, it's really important for us to know what is the dividing line between dharma and non-dharma. And in order to recognize this, we need to ascertain in our minds what the dharmas, the scriptures, the sutras and tantras teach should be discarded, and what are the ones to be taken up. And we need to understand this meaning. So understanding the meaning, and we need to realize the meaning. And this should not be left as something that we just understand or have heard. We need to put it to practice. If we are able to put it into practice, we can be counted as a pure Dharma practitioner. Now, whether we've put it into practice or not is not just having an understanding in your mind, or just knowing or understanding the meaning. What it primarily depends on whether you have strong longing and determination. You have to have strong longing. Then you have to have definite determination and fervent determination. For example, if we want to enter the path or have the path of the listeners and Pratyeka Buddhas take root in our being, we absolutely have to have the intention of wishing to achieve nirvana, liberation from the prison of samsara. But what we make the most important in this lifetime is getting the fame and goods and respect in this lifetime. We make that the main thing that we try to achieve, and what we practice to gain. And so it's difficult for us to even get away into the ranks of the listeners and Pratyeka Buddhas. For the path of the Mahayana path to take root in our being, we should only think of benefiting others and have no thought of our own self-interest at all. Or at the very least, we should consider that others are more important than ourselves. But when you look at our current situation, when something unfortunately happens, when something unfortunate happens to the people we don't like, and for a few hours we feel like joy deep inside ourselves. It's also difficult for us to say that we've entered the ranks of the Mahayana. And when we're doing tantric practice, we should meditate on the entire world as a pure realm and all the beings who inhabit it in the form of perception. But for us, everything that appears to us arises as an adversary. And everyone we see is like appears to us as like as an enemy, at the very least. So that everything, actually, in the very least, everything that appears to us is something that we don't like, and whoever we see, we kind of get annoyed at them. And so it's difficult for us to become tantric practitioners who practice the secret mantra Vajrayana. And so in brief, we don't know the crucial points of what to do and what to give up. So we confuse the practices of the three types of vows and the Buddha taught that we should discard the disobedient and naturally unwholesome acts, but instead we put them into practice. We do them. And so even though we are not actually Dharma practitioners, we look on the outside as if we are practitioners. And we act in various ways as if we were. But Mikyo Dorje said that this is pointless, and this is like the bark on the outside or the husk on the outside of something that needs to be discarded. It is something externally discarded. It is not something to keep. He knew this. He realized this. And he also taught that unmistaken path or the unmistaken meaning to others. And so for that reason, to him who taught the unerring meaning and fine path, to Mikyo Dorje, I pray. So when we recite this prayer, the praise he searched thoroughly, we shouldn't then think that these points are merely praises of Mikyo Dorje or descriptions of his greatness. We shouldn't think of it like that. Instead, there is, Ajahn Tsongkhapa wrote in his summary of the stage of the path, I, a yogi, practice like that. You who want liberation, do the same. And later they changed it a little bit and said, the Jetsun Gurus practice like that. You who want liberation, do the same. So they shifted the words, they changed the words a little bit. But in the collected works of Tsongkhapa in his minor works, it says, I, a yogi, practice like that. So that's the actual quote from Tsongkhapa. In any case, it's just the same. Just as the Jetsun Gurus, the venerable gurus, practice like that, you have to practice. The practice such as they did it is something that we need to follow. And we need to work to make that happen. And this is extremely important. And so when you read these prayers, such as the praise he searched thoroughly, we shouldn't say, oh, I'm praying, please protect me. And burden the Lama with all of our hopes and instead we need to think about ourselves, to think as we recite the prayers. Now the meaning of this actually is, I think, similar to the meaning of the second good deed that we discussed yesterday, so I don't need to go into depth. So now I'd like to think about the third good deed from the autobiographical verses, Good Deeds. So this is the third good deed. And this third good deed There is the commentary by Sangye Peldrup called The Bright Lamp. And according to its outline, this is called The Favorable Condition Following Great Spiritual Friends. The first reads, when I saw that the Mahayana masters were unmistaken and became captivated by their excellent qualities and acted in harmony with all of their august examples. The great beings therefore granted me their blessings with delight. I think of this as one of my good deeds. So now what this teaches is how Mikyo Dorji himself how he pleased them in ways in harmony with the true Dharma. Now, there is a text called the Past Deeds of Mikyo Dorji that he wrote himself. And within that, you see, it describes how he met his spiritual friends and made a connection of connection and purification, as he phrased it. And when he wrote this, he writes, I met the great being, the Nyewo Goshri Tulku Tashi Namgyal, an emanation of Milarepa's disciple Shiva O, and of the Bodhisattva Paljadendra. He gave me the Mahayana fasting vows and empowerments, blessings, and pith instructions, including the Bhagavan Gyao Jatso, Vajravarahi, Mahakala Bernakchen. I esteemed him highly with unbreakable respect and made him the object for gathering merit and confessing misdeeds. So if you the first guru in Mikyo Dorji's lifetime, it was the second Gyaltsab Rinpoche, Tashi Namgyal. So how is the Gyaltsab Tulku Tashi Namgyal, or the second Gyaltsab Rinpoche? If you ask him, please, how could you give an introduction to his life? So I will describe it in brief. The second Gyaltsab Rinpoche was born in central Tibet in a valley called Nyemo. And the year he was born in was in the fire sheep year of the 8th cycle. This is probably 1487. The 7th Karmapa Chura Gyatso recognized him as the reincarnation of Gotrī Pāļu Dundrop. In the water pig year in 1503, as Guru Rinpoche had prophesied, Chura Gyatso gave him a red crown with a golden blaze that had been accomplished and blessed as the essence of speech of Vajra Abhitaba of Lama Gondry practice. And so that is when the practice of Shamar of him wearing the orange-colored crown. So now, in terms of his accomplishment of the Dharma, was actually really great. So if you needed to receive an empowerment from Gyaltsab Rinpoche, then you would go to receive them from Goshri Tulku and Drung Sitaba and his brother, and from Drumbo Goshu. There was also a tradition of receiving instructions in monastic ordination from the tradition of Je Kyatse. So he had received many transmissions and empowerments. And so, for example, when we read the list of Karma Trilapa's transmissions received, he said most of the oral transmissions were from them. And so most of the impairments, pith instructions, and transmissions were from Goshri Gyaltsab, and these others. And so his activity in this way was similar to the activity of Goshri Pāļu Dundrop, who was had really listened to many. Goshri Pāļu Dundrop had received pretty much all of the empowerments transitions and lungs for all of the different lineages available in Tibet. And so the second Gyaltsab also had a similar activity. So after the 7th Karmapa Chura Gyaltsab passed away, Goshri Tashi Namgyal was the regent of these, and so he was given the title of Gyaltsab Tulku, so the regent Tulku. That's from that time. So now we say Gyaltsab. So Goshri was the name given during the first time. Pajadinuk was given
닌 고시들라 치중망보도
the title of getting Goshi. So there are different levels of Goshi. So there's a Goshi, there's Great Goshi, Panding Goshi, Kwanding, so the empowered, is the empowered. So this Goshi is it's Italian, excuse me, it's Chinese, but when you say it with a, it's in Tibetan, it's many people think that it's kind of similar to Sanskrit.
고시를 써야 돼. 고사리 계급을 시리 써야 돼. 다 로변으로 차대. 계급 로변 써.
Goshi, Guo means in Shi means a teacher. So it makes the teacher for the country. And so Gyatso Rinpoche went to Chang and benefited many ascensions in many ways. And then he returned to Gompa Tselakang and built representations of bodies, speech, and mind. And particularly, he built a golden reliquary study for the remains of the seventh Karmapa. Then he recognized and enthroned the eighth Karmapa, and in the end passed away. In the wood pig year of 1515, he was only 29 years old, but he passed away. So as I said before, the conditions or the circumstances of his passing away, and so I spoke about that yesterday. I'm not going to talk about such unfortunate circumstances. So if we only commiserate every day, doesn't work. So that is now, we'll say that this is a short account of Gyatso Rinpoche's life. So next is the question of when did Mikyo Dorje meet Gyatso Rinpoche? How did he meet him? And what Dharma connection did they have? So in the year of the bird, so this is 1513 probably. So on the first day of the first lunar month of that year, Mikyo Dorje, so this time he was called the Eastern Tulku, before he had come to that. And when he first came to the encampment, and on the day that he came, before the sunset on that day, he came to Gyatso Rinpoche and they met for the first time. Then on the 11th day of the second lunar month, the Eastern Tulku, or Mikyo Dorje himself, was enthroned on the Karmapa as the Karmapa. Now, so at that point, one thing I need to say is that Mikyo Dorje had been predicted by many Tertons, and so because many Tertons had given the prophecies, and some of the prophecies it says, some say that there was only 7 Karmapas who'd appear, and even though there was that prediction, it's often said the first 7 Karmapas are true Karmapas, but the following that they are, and the reason is because they weren't prophesied by Guru Rinpoche. So they say that's what they say, but that's because they only saw one prophecy. But in other prophecies, it said that he would be 7 burns and 13 emanations. So there's also that prediction. So for that, it's the first of these 13 emanations would be Mikyo Dorje, and the name Mikyo Dorje itself is indicated in Mikyo Dorje's prophecies. So I'll speak about these prophecies later if I have some time. But at this point, I don't need to talk about a lot of prophecies. So at that time, when the Eastern Tulku was put on the throne, now I mentioned this. Yes, I didn't describe this yesterday clearly the other day, so I'll talk about it yesterday. So after the Eastern Tulku was put on the throne, the father of the Western Tulku, Amdo Lama, he had given all the wrong views to the he had instilled wrong views in leaders and followers in the encampment, and he said, and so things didn't work out as he'd said, and he made them, and he said, I'm not going to stay in the encampment. I'm going back to Zhongsong and Kongpo. And when he said that, Gyaldo Rinpoche said, it's better for you to stay in the encampment. And your son is not the Karmapa, but I can make sure that he is given the same importance and respect as I am. And the leaders of the encampment also discouraged him, but he didn't listen. And so he went back to Kongpo Draksum and Kongpo. And as they're going down, the father and son, I'm not sure how, and I don't know what the reasons, but someone else captured them. And when they were captured, and they lost their freedom, and all the monks who were in the retinue all just scattered, and they had no food or any resources, and they ended up in a very difficult situation, as the history is described. Then on the year of the bird, on the 1513, on the third day, the fourth lunar month, Mikyo Dorji took the Mahayana fasting vows from Gyaltsab Rinpoche. I was given the name Chukyap Drapapal Sampo. And then gradually, he was given the empowerments of Hayagriva and Varahi. So that began at that point. And then on the third day of the 8th lunar month of the same year, at Wulung Retreat, a monastery, there's a place called Wulung, and there's a monastery there, and that is where Gyaltsab gave him the vows going forth. So he discarded the signs of a layperson and took on the signs and robes of a monastic. So in brief, Mikyo Dorji considered Gyaltsab extremely kind to him. Not only that, he also treated Gyaltsab Rinpoche's reincarnation very respectfully. A Feast for Scholars by Paul Rinpoche says, he thought of Shamar Kunchi Yenlag, the Nirmanakaya of the fourth holder of the Shamarkan, and Drapa Pelja, the Tulku of Gyaltsab Rinpoche, as his actual lamas. He did not think of them otherwise as his students. So he considered the reincarnation of the fourth Shamar Chenga Chuda, that is the fifth Shamar Chikunchi Yenlag, and Drapa Pelja, the Tulku of Rinpoche, as his actual lamas. That is the next one. So. And he also describes this very clearly in his autobiography. As it says in the autobiography, after that I approached the Nirmanakaya of the Lord himself, great Avaduti Papadrak. Though I did not actually make offerings of body and speech, mentally I took him as worthy of prostrations and respect, and did as much accumulation and purification as I could, as fit with my mind. And so basically the third Gyaltsab Drapa Kunja was the third Gyaltsab Rinpoche. So he did not actually physically prostrate or make offerings for him because he was a younger guru, and someone that Mikyo Dorji had recognized. So if Mikyo Dorji had prostrated, it wouldn't have looked good. But in his mind, he had incredibly great respect, as he says. And so this is speaking about a brief amount about the first guru of Gyaltsab Rinpoche, Gyaltsab Rinpoche, Mikyo Dorji's first lama, and how he followed him. And then the second, or you could say the most important guru, who is that? It was Sanjin Nyempa Druptop. So Sanjin Nyempa Druptop. So what was he? How did he first meet him? How did he follow him? So I'd like to give an explanation, but first we will take a break, and then when we come back, we will begin immediately with this.